Hello there guys. In this video I'm going to be building the Zakspeed Yamaha 891 in 1/24th scale from Hasegawa. This kit has been released a number of times over the years, but was originally released in 1989. If we have a look inside the box, you can see this is quite an old release. The instructions seem a little bit yellowed, and the decals definitely are more yellow than white there. I have of course got replacement decals for those because they will be no use whatsoever. Inside we've got a single plastic bag containing our sprues, plus some tyres, and if we crack this bag open, at first I thought maybe this plastic had started to yellow, but I'm not sure if it was just moulded in that colour. The tub actually seems to be a slightly different shade to the other white parts. As you can see, not many parts at all. One white sprue which is primarily the external bodywork parts, and a couple of black sprues which make up the suspension, the wings and the engine details. These Hasegawa instructions always have quite a old school feel to me, with their sort of red and white, or red and white and black printing. And of course the format is very similar to any F1 car that you're going to build. The red, white and black printing of course does make it slightly harder to understand the livery at the back. As with all Hasegawa instructions, the paint callouts are in the Mr. Hobby line of paints. The 891 was the Zakspeed team's car for the 1989 Formula 1 season, and to be honest with you, I knew very little about this car before I bought the kit. And now I do know more about it, I can't help asking, why did Hasegawa make a kit of this car? I don't mind, I enjoy building F1 cars, but this must be one of the least successful F1 cars in history. Zakspeed's 1988 car had failed to score any points, meaning that they had to pre-qualify for each race during the 1989 season. Back in those days, because there were so many cars and only 26 could enter the race, the slowest cars would have to pre-qualify in order to even enter the qualification sessions. Unfortunately, and this is why I don't really understand why Hasegawa made a model of this car, the Zakspeed 891 only qualified twice out of 32 attempts, 16 for each driver, during that season. Both of these qualifications were by Bernd Schneider, who managed to qualify for the Brazilian Grand Prix and the Japanese Grand Prix, but retired from both races. Japanese rookie driver Aguri Suzuki didn't pass pre-qualifying all season. In fact, I think there is our answer as to why Hasegawa made this kit. I suspect it's based on the fact that Suzuki is a Japanese driver, and of course Hasegawa are a Japanese company. And in fact it is Suzuki's helmet which appears on the box art. Perhaps Hasegawa had entered a contract to build this kit, maybe they'd started tooling it midway through the season before they realised just how poor the car actually was. Nevertheless, it's not a particularly ugly design. It's quite nice in those white and red colours, and although you can see on the box art that we have the East logo, that of course is a non-tobacco version of the West tobacco brand. So while I've been talking, you'll notice that I've built up most of the engine and gearbox. I also removed most of the parts from the sprue and gave them a primer coat of either Tamiya grey primer for most parts, or a coat of Tamiya white primer for anything that will be bodywork and therefore will be painted either white or red. And of course the reason for that is that it's very hard to paint white over grey, and although red will go over grey, the grey base coat will dull that red, and I want a nice shiny bright red. I used a variety of paints on this kit. Something like this seat I painted with my airbrush in Tamiya XF19 I think it was. But then the black detail for this I brush painted with Vallejo model colour. I also used Vallejo paints, this time their metal colour range, for various metallic parts including the radiators here, the body of the engine, and so on. And one nice trick that you can do with the Vallejo metal colours is you can mix in a small amount of their model colour to give you a different colour metallic paint. So in this case I took some chocolate brown, mixed it in with the metallic steel colour to give me a kind of burnt metal colour for the exhausts. I think that's quite a handy little tip there. Another paint I tried during this build is this new product from Galeri. These are their paint markers and this is their metallic series. As you can see, this box includes 10 marker pens with the colours here. Let me just freeze that for you. These are not designed to paint large areas, for example the radiators, but they are really good for small details and touch-ups. So for example these brake discs here have been primed in grey, and I can use this zirconium black here to attempt to paint them. The instructions are on the cap. You give the pen a shake. The first time only you have to squeeze the nib down, and then you use it very much like a regular marker pen. So this is the aluminium colour on one of the engine details. The only thing I would say here is because it is paint, it does continue to flow, so obviously with a regular Sharpie, if you hold it in position it doesn't do anything, but with these pens the paint will continue to flow, and it is possible, though it's quite hard, to sort of flood the area with paint. And to me, using it for a small area like this is a lot more efficient and a lot easier than cracking out a bottle of paint, putting a couple of drops somewhere, which invariably will be more paint than you need, and then using a brush and having to clean the brush afterwards. This is the same aluminium colour on the suspension components. Apologies for the focus there. And here are the brake discs. This is the scorched gold colour, which is just a bit toned down from the flashy gold. If you get something like this with these marker pens, you can see I'm applying the flashy gold here and it's going kind of running horrible. That's just because you haven't properly shaken those pens up and the paint isn't properly mixed. And you can see there, once I've done that, that goes down a lot better. I have tried to improve my modelling skills over the years, of course, but I think if there's one area that I definitely need to keep working on, it's the removal of the ejector pins from things like this floor pan. However, once that floor is painted, we can start to add some components to it, starting with the radiators. We've got an asymmetric design here, which is not uncommon for cars from the 1980s. One of the nice things about having old decals which are no longer useful for decaling is that you can use them for other things. In this particular case, I'm going to take this white decal here and I'm going to use it as a mask for the white paint on my model. So I cut it finely out, and then you can see that my new decal sheet from Shunko doesn't include those white stripes, which is absolutely fine. It just means I'll need to mask those main colours. What it does include is the fine stripes between the red and the white, and that will really help me because it will give me a little bit of leeway if there's any colour bleeding. So I took that cut out old decal, put it onto some Tamiya masking sheet and cut around it, and that gave me the perfect mask for my cockpit. And in fact here is the cockpit, having been painted with Tamiya X7 gloss red. And generally speaking that has come out okay, apart from that small amount of colour bleed there at the front. I tried to remove that with a cocktail stick, but the paint was already too hard. Once that paint is dry, we can start to add the front suspension. Unfortunately, in this process I did break the connector clips at both ends of one of the suspension arms. Unfortunately, you always need a bit of force to get these in place, and sometimes, like in this case, the suspension arms are more fragile than the force required. The cockpit then goes over the top of the seat. The engine can finally fit into place, and then our bodywork can go into position around that. Then the decaling can begin in earnest, and as suspected, that gold and red stripe decal there does a lot to hide my masking sins and really neatens up the edge between those two colours. As mentioned, we do get a choice between the West tobacco branding and the completely definitely not tobacco East branding. But you know, this is the 1980s. This is when tobacco ruled motorsport, so West it is. For a pretty much unsuccessful car, we do have quite a few sponsors on this. And I've gone here for car number 35, Aguri Suzuki. Although he never raced this car because he never qualified, he was the more successful of the two drivers ultimately in Formula 1 over the length of his career. I never know what you call this type of decal that we use for the tyres here. I don't think they're dry transfers, but they always seem to survive a lot better than your regular decals. So these are the original ones from the kit. What we do is cut them out, peel them off, and we have to put them on sort of inverted, as it were, to get the writing the right way. Rub them onto the tyre, which I normally do with a wet cotton bud. I'm not sure if that's what you're supposed to do. And on they go. These days, for decals like this that go over gaps in removable parts, I tend to apply the decal and then use an ultra sharp brand new blade to cut it in half once it's dried. Then, with the wheels going on and the mirrors in place, our Zakspeed 891 is ready. And there we go, guys, that was my build of the Zakspeed 891 from the 1989 Formula 1 season. If the car's performance was as good as its looks were, then it would do a lot better, I think. I really do like this livery, very simple colour scheme, lots of classic 80s logos and brands on there. I hope you enjoyed this build. I know a lot of you are not particularly car fans, but I hope you will stay tuned, because I do have quite a lot of aircraft and AFV models on their way. Until then, I'd like to say thank you to all of you for watching, and extra special thanks to my Patreon supporters and YouTube members who give ongoing monthly support to this channel. Thank you very much, guys, it is massively appreciated. I hope to see you in a future video, which, as I mentioned, will be a military themed video.